Nice to meet you virtually. I don't think we've had the pleasure in person yet.
Handshake. Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for the time. I almost want to just take a second with, sentiment, price, all of this craziness. What's your message for people? Like, just buy Bitcoin and like, that's it. Like, like it doesn't have to be trading in and out of things and making $1 gazillion in 5 minutes and losing it all. Like, what does this moment kind of say to you?
I mean, I've been on the media recently saying this to me is Bitcoin's the best expression of fiat liquidity. I think Bitcoin is priced on future expectations of fiat. And it's become the best expression of currency debasement, which humans have been trying to find and engineer for quite some time. My dad was the one that introduced me into Bitcoin. Before he got into Bitcoin, he was running a dollar short trade through real estate, or he even invested in and helped build some of the Chicago exchanges under this thesis that if they continue to debase the currency, exchanges is a great business because everyone's a speculator. So all that to say, I think that Bitcoin has become the best expression of fiat debasement because it's the antithesis to fiat. Fiat has no supply cap. Bitcoin is finite. Fiat can't be audited. Anyone can audit Bitcoin. Fiat can be censored. Bitcoin can't. Fiat is not global. Bitcoin is. And so we're living through a liquidity crunch. I mean, the US government had a $200 billion trade surplus in September, which would imply we run a $2 trillion surplus annually. In fact, we run a $2 trillion deficit. So we had a unique trade surplus in September. Then October, we were shut down. There's a liquidity crunch going on, but the liquidity cycle is bottoming out. I mean, QT ends December 1st. QE is going to begin. Rate cuts are happening. So I consider this a buy the dip moment. It's no stress, no sweat off my back. And, I'm adding through as many businesses as I'm allowed to.
What did Bitcoin kind of mean to you when you first heard about it, discovered it, and then appreciated it? And then what does it mean to you now? And,
wow.
And just to like kind of like when you look back, can you walk us through, are there a couple of moments that really stand out to you as like, this was one of those 2 or 3 moments from the beginning to now of like, okay, we're like something significant happened. We're making a difference. We're making progress, something in that direction.
Sure. Yeah. Wow. Philosophical. So I got into Bitcoin when I was 18. I'm 31 now. The 18-year-old me was a college dropout, depressed and lost. And, you could say I was introduced to Bitcoin. I found Bitcoin. I like to think I almost caught Bitcoin and its worldview through my father. Actually, I've referenced him twice now, but my dad was the one that introduced me to Bitcoin in a very unique time in my life where, I wasn't as good at reading Shakespeare as the guy or girl to the left or right of me. I wasn't as good at math homework as the guy or girl to the left or right of me. And I didn't understand why that made me a failure, why that made me a loser, and why I couldn't have as good a life because I didn't understand modern day education and building on top of resumes that built on top of resumes. And my dad introduced me to Bitcoin at the time, which to me was greater than just a new technology or an investment. It was a greater purpose for an 18-year-old kid that needed to find something that was something bigger than me and allowed me to be a part of something that was going to last far longer than I would, contributing to something morally just and ethically sound. And it was the first time I felt like I had purpose and I had unbounded amounts of energy to give to something that could always allow for more. And that was my introduction to Bitcoin. It was like the first truth-bearing idea that I'd ever experienced as a child. You grow up and, modern day media is dubious at best. News on the TV, dubious at best. And as part of the younger generation, I think, we're sick of politicians, man. Nobody wants like an old executive in a blue suit and brown sneakers saying all the things that they're paid to say. And no one wants another politician lying to your face. And Bitcoin was the first piercing truth that allowed me to believe and be hopeful about something. And so that was my introduction. And it was through my father as well, which made it all the more special. Some of the moments, my favorite Bitcoin moment was 2017, the block size wars. For those that don't know or aren't familiar, I'll give you a 10-second summary, which obviously is going to be oversimplified, but there was a lot of corporate interest to change Bitcoin, put it simply. And Bitcoin survived and refuted all of the largest corporate interests in the world at that time because it worked. At the time, Bitcoin theoretically worked. If you read the code, it worked. If you ask your technical buddy, it should work. But put to the fire in practice, does it actually work? And it worked. And the entire network was able to protect the integrity of the network and actually protect the rules. And so that was the biggest moment where I was like, wow, this thing does empower the individual. It does speak for the people, and it works, and we can withstand corporate overthrow and overtaking us. So that was my favorite moment outside of, obviously there's more recent ones, but I think that's what you wanted me to say. I think that's what you were asking.
I was just purely curious. I was at my first Bitcoin conference was Miami 2021.
Sure.
Right. So that was kind of a moment on stage. That's what I think of. I wasn't clued in back in 2017. So no.
Yeah.
How did everything actually come together in conversations with Cantor and all of these names are huge.
Mm-hmm.
Strike, SoftBank, like just in their own rights, it's like powerhouses. So
yeah.
I struggle in a positive way to just wrap my mind around what it could be possible when you put two or more like huge names or forces in the same room. So just so.
Yeah. I mean, the real story, I don't know how much time we have, but the real story is I co-founded the business with Tether. So just to kind of understand the participants at hand here, because it gets confusing. I co-founded the business with Tether. SoftBank is our largest outside investor. So they have a significant stake, but it's a minority stake. And then Cantor is our SPAC partner. So they've been a great partner. I've loved working with Cantor, but they're not on the board. They aren't necessarily part of the team per se. The Financial Times has misreported that, Brandon was the CEO of 21 or whatever. And they actually have acted sometimes as our investment bank, or in this particular case, as our SPAC partner. So that's kind of the lay of the land. And so co-founding the business with Tether, I've known the Tether guys for a long time. There's not that many people that have been around in Bitcoin for over a decade and are still around and active today. And so, we chat about all sorts of stuff. Like Paulo and I were early Lightning pioneers, and Bitfinex was the first major exchange to integrate Lightning. I had built the first Lightning Network wallet. So through the years, there's just been conversation. And I think obviously what Saylor sparked within this industry is tremendous. And we were like, wow, there is serious institutional demand and appetite within the capital markets for Bitcoin exposure. And we were just interested in following it and kind of, having group chats as if we're sitting around a campfire, talking about it, asking each other questions like any other Bitcoiners would. And then it got to the point where, the spectrum that we view this industry as is Coinbase is on one far side of the spectrum, which is a operating business that produces cash flows, and the capital markets look to Coinbase to get crypto exposure. But they're not a Bitcoin company, in our opinion. And Tether and I, we're Bitcoiners. We think Bitcoin is, seeing the forest through the trees. We don't have that interest in shit coins or altcoins, whatever you call them. And then on the other side of the spectrum was Michael and Strategy. And Strategy was entirely financial engineering, as self-described by Michael. That's not a diss. No interest in an operating business. And it was looking to finance leverage through either equity capital, so through dilution, or if they have to sell the Bitcoin. And the more the industry matured, we figured, well, hold on a second. We think that there's room in the middle there. Why is nobody doing a combination of the both? Like, why wouldn't you want to, why isn't Coinbase using their cash flows to finance leverage to go all in on Bitcoin on their balance sheet? It doesn't make any sense. How are they not the largest holders of Bitcoin in the world? That's what people say and think. And I think they're righteous in that opinion. And then for Strategy, it's like, well, why isn't Michael building massive Bitcoin business lines and optimizing his lead and his brand in the space to generate all sorts of cash flow that can help finance the preferred dividends or help finance any type of leverage so that it's not putting so much pressure on the common stock. And eventually it got to the point where me and Tether were like, let's just do it. Be the change you want to see. To be totally honest with you, they called me and said, come on, man, like we got to do it. No one, like we've been watching this market for years now. No one's filling this void that we think, how Bitcoin should be represented in the capital markets. And I was like, come on, man, I just gotten Strike to be this immensely profitable startup. My girlfriend just moved in. I'm looking to get engaged soon. I'd love to have children. We're going to start another company. But of course, after you sit down, it's what's good for the world. We believe it's good for Bitcoin. We believe it's good for shareholders. And so that was a lot of kind of the founding thesis, is that, we want to be the best way to participate in Bitcoin in the capital markets. We think we can bring both blue chip credibility. So as you mentioned, these type of brands and the integrity that we bring and the capital that we bring with startup upside. Tether and I have been immensely successful at building Bitcoin businesses with high margins, high growth, and cash flow. And so we can approach leverage and approach building a Bitcoin treasury with the asset that is growing cash flow in an operating company that's Bitcoin focused. And we're somewhere in the middle of the spectrum of Coinbase and Strategy. And we think that's at very least a unique equity within the capital markets. And at best, it might be the best way to garner exposure to Bitcoin's story via the capital markets.
Can you expand a little bit on the word leverage? Because I guess I'm just trying to understand, are you open to potentially amplifying, or whatever word you want to use, to create a narrative to kind of like a little bit of the financial engineering? Or is it like, no, we're just going to buy Bitcoin, no fancy work, just like financial services business, Bitcoin on the balance sheet. We're not a Bitcoin treasury company. I'm just trying to
totally. Yeah. And to be honest, it's a difficult conversation to have now. And I think this is why you guys are doing the show, because the definition of these words changes. I mean, I had a meeting where someone was like, are you going to torque and amplify me? And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? So it gets a little confusing. So when I say we're not a treasury company, what I mean by that is, when I got into Bitcoin, Satoshi had invented the first decentralized digital currency. Vitalik then minted a bunch of ETH tokens, put them in his pocket, and then came out and said, I also invented a decentralized digital currency. We're like, well, now you've ruined the word decentralized for the rest of us, man, because now you've convoluted it so much that it carries no real definition. Yeah. And so for treasury company, to me, it seems to imply you're not building an operating business. You're seeking out leverage. And now whether we now have different terms of leverage, but you're finding a way to borrow money. You have an expectation of, payments, fiat obligations in the future that you need to finance. And it's optimizing around this Bitcoin per share. We are substantially different than that, because we are going to also have a Bitcoin operating business. And we've been very public that we have interest in financial services specifically. And, the combination of Tether and I's background is very likely where we'll pursue our products and where we'll seek out cash flow. And so that marks this big difference. Like what I said recently in the media is, if Strategy has these dividend payments that they need to make, which again, this is not a bad thing. We just have a different strategy. If they have these dividend payments they need to make, how are you going to pay them? In many ways, you're adding leverage to your MNAV, because you're implying that the premium on your common equity will be high enough to fulfill the obligations to pay out preferred investors. So your new investors, what you're implying is your new investors are carrying the responsibility to pay out preferred investors. If that's not the case, then you need to sell the Bitcoin, but there is no other option. And our approach at 21 is, if we go pursue these opportunities, which we're absolutely interested in, we've already raised a convert. There are all sorts of ways we can leverage the capital markets and market structures to garner Bitcoin exposure, but we plan to have a third option, which is we have equity capital, we have Bitcoin on our balance sheet, and we have cash flow. And imagine if Strategy had enough cash flow from an operating business to finance its dividend payments. I think the market would like that. I think the market would be really excited about that. Imagine if Coinbase, with the billions of dollars of top line revenue or hundreds of millions of dollars of positive EBITDA, if they use that cash to finance preferreds or to finance some form of leverage or borrowing cheap capital. So we want to innovate there and show that there's a place for that in the market. Does that make sense or answer your question?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate that. Can you speak about the financial services part of it? And maybe it's Strike, maybe it's Tether, maybe it's something that is just an idea or a thought at this point. But I feel like with your ethos, it's more like banking the unbanked and bringing like let's get more equality in the world.
Yeah, I think that comes with Bitcoin's success. Hopefully we can contribute to that directly, and then hopefully we can contribute to that indirectly by supporting Bitcoin. You know, for me, as a public company officer in the CO21, my job is to produce value for shareholders. And the immediate interest for us is what are high margin, high growth opportunities that we feel like we have a unique advantage in participating in, that we can execute and we can build a massive business on top of. Unfortunately, I was telling Ed, you know, I've got a shareholder vote on the 3rd of December. We're not approved yet. So I'm very limited in this is technically a quiet period for me. But what I have been public in saying is that I think there's been 4 core business lines in this industry, this broad industry, that have been successful. And what I mean by successful is very simply profitable, high margin, high growth, real business opportunities. One is exchange and brokerage. I know that from experience with Strike. Tether knows that experience in Bitfinex. It's a good business. Selling people a 50 CAGR asset is a good business. The second is lending. So credit markets on top of Bitcoin are very nascent. They're very early. I estimate the lending market on top of Bitcoin is about $25 billion in size on top of a $2 trillion asset. It's tiny. And a lot of the products on top of it are very early. Like you get a 12-month fixed term loan, and that's the only option you have. There's no lines of credit. There's no margin. But that business is high margin, high growth, lots of upside. To us, it ethically and principally makes sense that we would build reliable, trustworthy credit products on top of pristine capital. And then the other two are stable coins and Bitcoin treasury, like being able to accretively acquire Bitcoin through the capital markets. So we're already doing the Bitcoin treasury piece. We're the 3rd largest corporate treasury in the world, and we'll be able to substantially add to that once we're approved. We're not interested in the stablecoin one. That's not I think Tether's won that market. There's USAT with Bo. Not my swag, not my interest. 21 is not interested in stablecoins. And that kind of leaves us with these other Bitcoin related financial services that are very nascent, and you'd be surprised the lack of focus within the wider industry. There aren't that many people focused on scaling credit markets on top of Bitcoin or ensuring there are proper liquidity products for whatever institutions on top of Bitcoin. It's very new. And so that's where we've been poking and looking around. And, but I can't announce anything or any details like that. And so, our focus is on getting approved. And then hopefully after that, we can be a bit more transparent and where our interests are and how we're thinking about it.
I guess if you just zoom out and you're a long-term sort of holder of Bitcoin, all of this price action and volatility, it's very normal and you just kind of don't even think about it. But do you have any thoughts on, we're down 30%. That's very normal, but it's also, I think some people are taking pause because it really begs the question about this 4-year cycle narrative. Any thoughts there?
I don't buy the 4-year cycle. Listen, were the halvings material at one point in Bitcoin's life? Yeah, absolutely. When the issuance, it's Bitcoin, for all intents and purposes, has been distributed to the world. When I got involved in Bitcoin, 20% of the supply had been distributed. Now it's like 90%. And so the halvings become less material of a market impact over time. And then I also think that, again, Bitcoin is designed to be the best expression of fiat debasement. It's designed to be the antithesis, the opposite of fiat currency. It's what it was built to achieve, in my opinion. That's my interpretation. And so it's priced on the expectation of future fiat. And so I think it follows and maps liquidity cycles that are very evident and natural. And the thing that I don't think the wider market has fully digested yet right now, I think, and this isn't just Bitcoin, like equities today are risk off. Everything's a bloodbath out there. And I think what the markets are trying to sift through is what has been a liquidity dislocation. If you think this Trump administration campaigned on liquidity, in part because it sounds good, and the other part is because they have to print the money, but they wanted to reindustrialize, right? There was all sorts of pro-liquidity talk, but then you got Elon Musk that tried to doge the place and send us into austerity. And then you have the tariff wars, which are still arguably ongoing, which was very anti-liquidity. And you had Liberation Day or week that caused the 10-year treasury market to go into crisis, and Trump had to unwind from that. And then you operated in a $200 billion surplus, and then you shut the government down. And then on top of that, you have the biggest tech bubble we've seen since the 2000s, which is AI. And so the market is just trying to understand my liquidity index that I'm looking at right now. It's down 10% over the last 6 months, and Bitcoin and wider markets were front running liquidity that has to happen. That's what seeing gold make the highs it's making tells us governments and central banks are in trouble. There's a debasement coming. But seeing Bitcoin fall from highs right now tells us there might be a crisis before they do it. And Bitcoin is the smoke alarm. It's the natural index. It's the real-time indicator of how healthy the financial system is. And the pain that you have to endure for riding the real-time indicator correlates to the highs and the success that you get on the other side when they do provide the liquidity. The Fed ends QT on December 1st, QE shortly after that. We've got rate cuts. We've got $2,000 stimulus checks. The Japanese bond market's blowing up as I'm talking to you right now. So Bitcoin will be both the most painful to hold when liquidity is tight and most prosperous to hold when liquidity is gushing. And if you want a different expression, own equities. Equities, a 4% equity drawdown is blood in the streets, and a 14% return is the best year anyone's ever had. For a Bitcoiner, I could take a nap through those numbers. So it's just, what's your risk tolerance? What's your approach? What's your time preference? And what's your belief? If you believe that fiat isn't going to last, Bitcoin's the best expression of that, but it comes with these market events. But given the liquidity cycles bottoming out, I think this is a buy the dip, and the market's digesting a lot of information, as opposed to if Powell was starting a tightening cycle and he was like, I'm going to hike rates the fastest rate I've ever hiked them, which happened in 2022, I would say differently on the show, but it's the opposite. Actually, they're not tightening anymore. So I digress.
I think Ed has a question.
Sure.
He's on mute, unfortunately, but we're going to fix that.
I was going to do sign language. How you doing, Jack?
What's up, man?
Hey, so in 21, I took my 12-year-old son to a Bitcoin conference, and you got on stage and dying on the hill, and my 12-year-old turns, because I'm crying, and my whale friend next to me is crying, and my 12-year-old goes, Dad, what's going on? And I look at him, I'm like, oh crap, I'm getting my son in a cult, right? And he just wanted to go to Miami. But prior to that, he just didn't want to hear about Bitcoin. It was this old man thing or whatever. But then when he saw you, he goes, that's a guy I can relate to, right? And then when I started working for Bitcoin conference in 23, and he volunteered at the conference, and he got to meet you in person, get a photo, and then we ran into you in the airport, and you were just so personable. I really want to thank you for what you've been able to do for that generation that needed someone to relate to, right? You're at 31. At 31, I mean, I wasn't even able to use half the words you use, right? It's just amazing your depth of knowledge, and it probably goes back to your father, which is a cool part about the relationship with me and my son and what he's doing in Bitcoin now. But you've just been this ultimate icon for the industry, and I think you're going to be able to bring more and more of these kids in. The first time I saw you in the hoodie, I'm like, come on, you can't wear a hoodie and talk seriously about finance, and you pulled it off, man. I
really appreciate that, man. That means a lot. I think, listen, I know that my approach can be seen as abrasive or off-putting to some, but it is intentful and it's purposeful for a lot of the reasons you explained. And also that I just have this overwhelming sense of conviction that the world is dying for authenticity, that we've been so inundated with political rhetoric and upper class making decisions on behalf of the people, and things like fiat just deprive society to benefit Washington, D.C. and to benefit Wall Street. And I think people just want a normal dude. And at the end of the day, we're all born the same. It's putting on suits and buying into rhetoric and agreeing to say things that you don't actually believe what seems to segregate us. And so I've been committed to being the opposite of that. And there's a lot of the world that won't like that. But I'm willing to wear those bullets for the people that you mentioned that do relate to that and see that things are possible. There is hope. The world isn't as evil and convoluted and sick as it's made to be seen. We can do this, and normal people can do this, and we can achieve it. And listen, I'm a college dropout. The fancy words I use, I got from people on Twitter. All you need is a Twitter account. So I appreciate that. And that's why the closet's empty, right? When I moved into this place, everyone thought I was going to fill it, and is that a kid trying to change money out of an empty women's wardrobe? And it's like, honestly, that's the perfect meme, because this hyper financialized, over consuming society that would fill this with Louis bags and Gucci shoes. Now I'm going to sit right in the heart of fiat currency and make everyone question everything they've ever been taught and stand for what's right. And so, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I don't know your fiance, but just wait until you're married, man. That closet will fill up quick.
Well, I mean, she moved in earlier in March, and she hasn't touched it. And that's a true.
She's got another closet down the hall.
She knows. She's not a Bitcoiner maybe like you and I are, but she's a Jack Coiner. And she understands what I'm trying to achieve.
Jack Coiner, man. Suit Coiner just went to the side, and now we got Jack Coiners.
Yeah.
I think all you need to do is just get that photo of the closet, and you can sell it on strike.me for people to use as a background.
We'll tweet it maybe so that everyone can use it as their Zoom background.
Use it. Now, thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully you'll be able to join us in Madrid in May. New market there in Spain. I don't think it's going to be that hard to talk you into going to Madrid in May.
No.
And then we'll be doing another unconference in September, and would love to have a fireside with you and Sailor and see the two of you guys go at it for a half.
Yeah, sure. And to be clear, like, I consider Michael a friend, and he's a lot of the reason we're all here. I think the free markets are the best way to govern humanity and society, and we differ in some opinions, but it is no attack and no diss whatsoever. I'm cheering him on. And I thank you guys for putting this together too. Needing education. People are trying to, are you going to torque the amplification to the leverage? And I'm like, man, I got to tune into Tim and Ed and make sure I understand what these people are talking about.
Well, even Tim with his tie, the term suit coiner came up, and Predator kind of bastardized it into guys in suits that are taking advantage of Bitcoin. And I didn't see it that way. Tim and I don't see it that way. We see it as guys that were wearing ties before. We were wearing suits, but we're Bitcoiners, right? And so we're infiltrating Wall Street, not the other way around.
Totally. And, I was asked in the media yesterday, do you feel that this is the suits? They didn't say that. They said ETFs, that IBIT, they're buying the top because they're the first time this product's been underwater on their buying. And I said, Wall Street's been buying the top of Bitcoin forever. That's one of Satoshi's greatest innovations, is that somehow he found a way to distribute it to the people. If he called Goldman Sachs and said, hey, I cracked the Byzantine generals problem, I solved a computer science problem previously impossible, I want to IPO it with Goldman Sachs, then they'd own 25%, investment banks would own another 25%, and we would have all gotten shafted. But he didn't. He leaked it on a mailing list and used proof of work. And for that reason, I love the suits because they're always buying the top. The individuals own this asset. It's already distributed. We're already through the distribution process. So yeah, Predator also was really upset that I wore a hoodie in Washington, D.C. So yeah, I love Predator. He plays a rifle role.
Yeah, one day we're going to do a poll to find out who Predator is. It doesn't. They say
I'd love to meet him or her,
or it, or they, or whatever. Right.
yeah.
Our next guest, Jason from Meanwhile. They've got a fantastic product for Bitcoin life insurance. I'll bring him in real quick because he's a big fan of yours as well. But
Nice. What's up, man?
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
It's another
Can
case.
do better.
Yeah, it's another case where somebody's come up with a fantastic product, a way to bring Bitcoin to another segment of life here. But
It's a life insurance tax wrapper, so to speak, for Bitcoin. I mean, if you think about it, life insurance has all these tax advantages baked into it. The government wants everyone to have life insurance who could afford it because it protects them, protects their family. And so everything's tax-free. Assets grow tax-free. You can borrow money out tax-free, and then the death benefit's tax-free. And wouldn't it be great if you had all those tax benefits for Bitcoin? Well, the only way to do that was to build a new life insurance company on the Bitcoin standard completely. Bitcoin is our functional currency. And so you pay your premiums in Bitcoin, your death benefits paid in Bitcoin, and you can borrow Bitcoin through policy loans out because it's whole life, not term, at a new stepped up basis. So for someone like me who's owned Bitcoin since 2013, I found out about this company a year ago while I was still at a crypto fund. I quickly got my own policy. And then after my fund was sold to Circle, I reached out to the team and I said, guys, this is the single most interesting product I've seen in Bitcoin and crypto since 2013 when I got in the space. And I asked him point blank, the CEO, I'm like, how do you not have 50,000 clients already? This is unbelievable. And he kind of shrugged his shoulders. He's like, well, we're just coming out of this, Operation Choke Point when we launched and and help us get there. And so I did. And here we are. And it's, what's interesting about our company though, is because we're on the Bitcoin standard, everyone always asks, what about volatility? You borrow, get a policy loan, and then Bitcoin crashes. One Bitcoin's one Bitcoin. It always is and always will be. And
it's
so
like any Bitcoin product, right, Jason, where you just gotta take a few minutes to understand it. While this is on, I got a text from my best friend from high school. He's like, when I buy a Bitcoin, what exactly am I buying? And I'm like, yeah, I can't do this right now. But, we'll let you go, Jack. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, sounds good.
We'll see you soon. And I will jump off as well, Tim, and let you jump into it with Jason. Thanks, Jack.
Take care, guys.
When it comes to holding Bitcoin securely, peace of mind starts with architecture. OnRamp's multi-institution custody model distributes control across 3 independent, regulated key holders in a 2 of 3 multi-sig quorum. No single point of failure, no pooled or omnibus exposure, just segregated, client-titled vaults. You retain full legal ownership while OnRamp coordinates security, compliance, and operational workflows behind the scenes. It's the strength of many delivered through the simplicity of one. MIC is the foundation for everything OnRamp builds. Sound infrastructure that distributes counterparty risk and provides fault-tolerant resilience with clear audits and institutional controls. And now, OnRamp is piloting flat, predictable pricing, making best-in-class Bitcoin custody and financial services more accessible than ever. OnRamp. Strength in many, simplicity in one. Visit onrampbitcoin.com to learn more. Hey guys, today's episode is brought to you by Stampseed. If you're in cold storage, you know how important it is to protect your seed phrase. That's why I recommend you head over to stampseed.com and check it out for yourself. This seed phrase storage device is one solid piece of titanium. There are no loose pieces, and you can hammer your seed phrase in letter by letter. When you go to stampseed.com, use promo code TIM15 for a 15% discount across the website. That's TIM15. Join us at The Win in Las Vegas, February 23rd through the 26th, 2026 for Bitcoin for Corporations. Use code KOTZ when you grab your tickets at strategy.com, and we'll see you there. This episode is brought to you by Arch Lending. the premier provider of crypto-backed loans designed for both individual and institutional investors. At Arch, your digital assets work for you without selling them. Arch offers flexible loan options tailored to your needs. Backed by industry leaders like Morgan Creek Digital, Castle Island Ventures, and Galaxy Ventures, Arch Lending is setting a new standard in crypto-backed lending. Are you ready to unlock the potential of your crypto assets? Visit archlending.com to learn more and configure your loan today. Are you looking for comprehensive analytics on corporate Bitcoin adoption? Strategy Tracker delivers real-time insights into how companies are executing their Bitcoin strategies completely free. Monitor NAV premiums, cost basis performance, and track how corporate Bitcoin treasuries perform against the market. Upgrade to premium for just $3.99 a month and unlock exclusive benefits like detailed market rankings, real-time trading volume analysis, and advanced performance metrics for corporations embracing Bitcoin. Apply code KOTZ at checkout for 100% off your first month of premium. Strategy Tracker is your essential tool for measuring the effectiveness of corporate Bitcoin strategies. Visit strategytracker.com and gain the analytical edge in understanding the Bitcoin treasury phenomenon.